up straight. Crack is cheap. I make too much money to ever smoke crack. Let's get that straight, okay? We don't do crack. We don't do that. Crack is whack.
You can't argue with that. Now, women reaching middle age and behaving like silly teenagers sounds great to me. But seriously, promiscuity, drugs, parties, it's ludicrous, really. Vivian Diller is a psychiatrist and author, a regular on our show. She's terrific, and she's in New York. Welcome to you.
Nice to be here again.
Now, you see this quite a lot, really, but we were chatting before the show. What is middle age? It's a moving target. It does vary. We're talking about, what, mid to late 40s for 20 years?
Yeah, I mean, that's part of the problem. You know, as life expectancy has extended from 58 to 78 in just a very short period of time, we're no longer talking about hitting middle age and then you have 10 more years to live. We're talking about hitting middle age about age 44, which is defined between when you're considered an adult to the end of life. So we're talking between 20 and, say, 78. There's somewhere in there about 44. We're talking about now living another 30 years post-middle age. And the issue I think that we're probably going to be talking about today is the fact that we're living in an ever-increasingly youth and beauty-obsessed culture.
Sure.
You know, you can't turn on a television or open a magazine without seeing some anti-aging ad, most often modeled by an airbrushed or photoshopped model in her 20s or 30s promoting a product for women in their 50s and 60s. So it's setting up a somewhat unrealistic expectation. And by the way, this is not just women. Yeah. You know, there are those ads for Viagra and Cialis and, you know, prolonging your virility. So I think this is not just a female issue. And we do have an ever-increasing aging population in the United States. I don't know what it is in Canada, but we have 78 million baby boomers, the first of which turned 65 this year. But 10,000 will turn 65 every single day for the next 19 years. That's a huge group of people who are trying to figure out, how do I hit that middle age, say 44, and face the next 30 or 40 years feeling vital, attractive, meaningful. And unfortunately, some people are taking the route of drugs, alcohol, you know, excessive dieting, and that's not a great solution. It's running people into trouble.
I think that's extremely well put. I mean, today, if you don't have a best-selling album out by the time you're 15, you're a failure. And you know, there was a time when we revered older people as these great mansions of wisdom, and now we think of older people as being slum dwellings that have to be smashed to the ground. And you mentioned attractive and meaningful. I mean, I think there are many people who would say, well, I mean, obviously I'm not going to be as obviously attractive as I used to be, but meaningful, that's very important. A lot of people, as they get older, what is my meaning in life? Kids have left, if I ever had any. But is this just another, a modern version of the midlife crisis?
What is different? Yes and no. Yes, I think confronting the end of life does make people reflect back and look, you know, what have I done? What would I like to do? And that sometimes puts people into a crisis. What is different, I think, is the incredible emphasis that our value lies in youth and beauty that has shifted, while at the same time we are living so longer. So those two sort of colliding currents, I think, is making people have a very hard time as they hit that crisis. Let's keep in mind that there's a lot more available for people to do to try to so-called anti-age. I find the phrase a funny one, like, how do you anti-age? But, you know, it's a very common phrase used, and we know that, again, here in this country, I don't know about Canada, there were 11 million cosmetic procedures done on men and women, the steepest rise being on women under the age of 30 and on men. The steepest rise. I mean, the largest category of plastic surgery is done on women in their 30s and 40s. But this is a new phenomenon. You know, this is not something just about, uh-oh, let me find my meaning. This is, uh-oh, what can I do to stop this, this future that I see so dreadfully? And I also think the recession has something to do with this. I think people are holding onto jobs longer. I think the fact that marriage rate has declined while divorce rate has pretty much steadied mean that there are more single people in middle age out there. You know, you think of getting older with someone. There are a lot of people out there who are single who are very anxious about getting older on their own. So those are the new phenomenon.
Yeah. No, it's very interesting because so much of this segues into the political. I'm not going to do it here, but we could discuss life issues and what family really is. And there is a reason behind family stability. And as you get older, and it's well, like those spaceships that went to the moon, they would jettison part of themselves as they went on. It didn't mean they were less viable and meant less, but it was just the way they progressed and proceeded. But we've rather abandoned so much of traditional family, and there are people who think they have to pretend to be 25, and it will be pretending, because you're not 25 anymore. You will look like an older person who's had surgery. And look, fascinating as always. Thank you so much, and I mean that.
Good to talk to you.